You know that incredibly visceral moment right after you realize you've just messed something up?
Oh, absolutely. Like right when the heat rushes to your face.
Yes. The second the email sends, or, the exact moment the words leave your mouth, your heart just drops straight into your stomach.
Terrible. It really
It
is.
is, and almost instantly, your brain starts spinning this incredibly loud, incredibly fast narrative about how you have just ruined everything.
Right, the doom spiral.
Exactly, the doom spiral. It is so overwhelming. And you, listening to this right now, you know exactly what that feels like. We all do.
Yeah, we all live in this chaotic sea of information and
We
expectations.
do. And when we hit a wall, it is so easy to feel completely buried by the weight of our own missteps. But what if we've completely misunderstood what a mistake actually is?
Which, spoiler alert, we definitely have.
Right. What if it's not a moral feeling, but just pure, unfiltered physics? Today, we are taking a sledgehammer to how you view failure, growth, and honestly, the very architecture of your life.
It really requires a sledgehammer, too. Because the reflex we have to internalize failure is just so universal.
It's baked into us.
It is. We experience a setback, and instead of just seeing a localized, isolated event, we immediately interpret it as a fundamental flaw in our own identity.
Like, we don't just say, that specific action did not produce the result I wanted.
Exactly. We say, I am a disaster.
Yeah. I am completely worthless.
Right. And the framework we're going to unpack today deconstructs that completely. We're going to dismantle the concept of what we unhelpfully call mistakes.
And we're redefining it, right?
Yes, we're redefining it as contact.
Mm.
And from there, we'll explore how to stop just apologizing for our lives and start actually redesigning them through a process called recalibration as praxis.
I love that phrase, recalibration as praxis. And just so you know, we aren't just going to stay in the clouds with abstract philosophy today.
No, we need practical tools.
Exactly. We're going to build a completely new blueprint. We'll decode all of this using an architecture called the 40P. That's target, truth, totally, and title.
It's a brilliant framework.
It really is. It explains exactly why you, and honestly society at large, fight so hard to avoid redesigning your life after a disaster.
And crucially, how you can actually break free from that resistance.
Right. But to get there, we have to start at the very beginning. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We have to strip away centuries of emotional baggage attached to the word mistake.
So to do that, I want you to imagine the very first time human beings truly understood fire.
Oh, this is such a good analogy from the source material.
It is, think about it, not just looking at it from a distance after a lightning strike, but the moment of true physical interaction.
Right, before it was a tool.
Yeah.
Long before anyone figured out how to use it for, like, cooking or industry or
It's
warmth.
the raw phenomenon of it.
Yeah, before it had a name or anything.
Exactly. Before fire was an abstract concept, before it had a name, it was simply contact. It arrived as sudden heat on the skin.
And pain.
Yes, pain. Brilliant illumination, imminent danger, and, total fascination.
Right, some ancient ancestor of ours reached a hand out.
They misjudged the distance. They touched this bright, dancing, chaotic thing. And in that single, irreversible instant, they discovered that reality answers back.
Reality answers back. That moment wasn't separate from discovery. It literally was the discovery.
Precisely.
But I think the most jarring part of this analogy is the indifference of the fire. The flame just doesn't care why the hand reached out.
Not at all. Physics is entirely indifferent to human narrative.
Which is terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
The fire does not care if the hand reaching toward it is innocent. It doesn't care if the person is curious or if they are a noble leader or like a hurried, panicked child.
Right.
Physics only cares about the material conditions. What was placed where, when, and for how long? The fire burns because contact occurred. Full stop.
Okay, I have to stop you there because when you say physics doesn't care about our intentions, it sounds incredibly cold.
It does sound cold.
If I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, wait, intent has to matter.
Right.
If I accidentally knock a glass off the table because I turned around too fast.
Right. Versus if you throw a glass at the wall in a fit of rage.
Yes. You can't tell me those are the exact same things. Socially, our entire justice system, our relationships, everything is based on intent.
Socially, yes. You're absolutely right. Intent is the glue of human coordination. We needed to figure out if someone is safe to be around.
Exactly.
But materially, causally, no. And confusing the social reality with the material reality is a massive category error.
A category error. Okay, explain that.
Well, to really clarify this distinction between our intentions and raw physics, Let's look at a thought experiment from the text. It's called the meteor test.
Okay, let's unpack this meteor test. How does it work?
The meteor test asks us to take our most revered, powerful abstractions.
Like what?
Things like prestige or the global economy or a person's deeply held pure good intentions. And we ask, what exactly can this abstract concept do in the face of raw physical reality?
Okay, so matching a concept against physics.
Right. Imagine a meteor the size of a city block is hurtling toward Earth.
Just a massive rock of doom.
Exactly. Now, the economy, no matter how robust it is, cannot alter its trajectory.
Right, a high credit score isn't going to deflect an asteroid.
No. National pride cannot slow it down by a single mile per hour.
And your pure, unadulterated good intentions cannot put up an invisible force field to stop the impacts.
Precisely. Abstractions are not physical forces. They can only enter the collision through material translation.
Material translation, what does that mean in this context?
It means the abstraction has to be converted into physical action to have any effect.
Okay, give me an example.
So a robust economy might dictate who had the funding to build the telescope to see the meteor coming.
Ah, I see.
And national pride might motivate people to actually dig the bunkers. But the concept itself, it does nothing.
Right, the concept doesn't lift a shovel.
Exactly. Intent matters solely because it guides our placement of things in the physical world. It dictates where we put our hands or where we build our houses.
But once the hand is placed in the fire...
Reality responds strictly to the placement. It does not respond to the purity of the heart that moved the arm.
Wow, that is a staggering shift in perspective. It just strips away all the emotional padding we use to protect ourselves.
It really does.
If you break the glass is broken. The floor is covered in shards, whether you meant to do it or not.
Exactly. The shards are there.
Which completely changes how we define a mistake.
Yeah.
Because usually when we say the word mistake, it's a moral smear. It's a diminishment.
It's treated as a sign of weakness or incompetence.
Yeah. If I say, I made a mistake, the subtext is almost always, I am apologizing for being a flawed, stupid person.
But functionally, in the realm of cause and effect, that is not what is happening at all. We need to redefine a mistake entirely.
Okay, so what is it if not a moral failure?
It is simply a contact point between a hypothesis and the world.
A contact point between a hypothesis and the world. Let's really ground that phrase. The specific definition in the text is that a mistake is an unintentional misfit between an operative judgment and the material conditions it encounters.
It sounds a bit academic, I know.
It does. An operative judgment. That just means the assumption I was operating under, right?
Exactly. Your operative judgment is your internal map. It's the simulation your brain runs before you take action.
Like predicting what will happen.
Right. It's the exact moment. A private, internal model of the world is forced to become accountable to reality outside your head. Think about a scientist in a laboratory.
Okay, I'm picturing the scientist. They set up the beakers. They have a theory.
They have a hypothesis. They believe chemical A mixed with chemical B will turn blue. They run the experiment.
They pour them together.
They pour the chemicals together, and the liquid turns bright red. The result completely contradicts their hypothesis.
Right. It's a mismatch.
But the scientist doesn't drop to the floor, start weeping, and declare themselves inherently worthless.
No. They don't say, I am a disaster of a human being because the liquid is red.
No. They look at the result as data. A mistake yields what we call mismatched data.
Mismatched data. I like that term.
Your brain ran a simulation. Let's say your simulation was, if I make this sarcastic joke to my partner at this dinner party, they will laugh and the tension will break.
Oh no, I can see where this is going.
You run the experiment, you say the words out loud, and instead of laughing, your partner is deeply hurt and the room goes dead silent.
Awkward. That is pure mismatched data right there.
Exactly. Your hypothesis was completely wrong.
The operative judgment, which was, this joke is funny and well-timed, met the material conditions, which was, my partner is exhausted and sensitive about this topic.
And reality answered back.
Yes. And we have to clearly differentiate this mismatched data from two other things, right? An error and malice.
Yes, that's crucial.
Let's draw those lines. How is a mistake different from an error? We use those words interchangeably all the time in normal conversation.
In this framework, an error is colder. It's systemic.
Like a machine failing.
Yeah, it's a glitch in a computer program or a literal typo in a line of code. It lacks that personal, intentional hypothesis testing.
Right, you didn't have a theory about the typo, your finger just slipped.
Exactly. Now, malice, on the other end of the spectrum, is an intentional act of harm.
You knew the joke would hurt, And you said it's specifically to cause pain.
Right. A mistake is different from both of those. It is an unintentional misfit. You aimed for one outcome, you got another, and because it yields that mismatched data, it suddenly opens the door for you to recalibrate your internal map.
Okay, I follow the logic. But if a mistake is just this incredibly valuable contact data, if it's just the universe giving us feedback, why do we feel so terrible when we make one?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why does that mismatched data feel like a physical punch to the gut? If I physically touch a fire, the pain makes biological sense. My body is telling me to move.
True.
But if I read a social cue, or if I launch a product at work and it completely fails, why is my first instinct deep, paralyzing shame?
Because we have built an entire inherited architecture of meaning that stains that mismatch with shame.
Inherited from where?
From everywhere, from childhood through schooling into corporate environments, we have been taught to view a smooth, error-free performance as the baseline of human worth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you get an A on the test if you make 0 mistakes.
Exactly. You get the promotion if you never drop the ball.
So the moment reality interrupts us and says, hey, your map is wrong, we don't just see the data, we see an indictment of our character.
Precisely. We interpret the data not as my hypothesis needs adjusting, but as my existence is flawed.
That is heavy.
It is. And this psychological leap from a localized action failing to a global identity crisis is exactly what prevents us from changing.
Because it's too painful to look at.
Right. If acknowledging the mismatch means acknowledging I am a worthless person, my brain will do everything in its power to deny the mismatch ever happened.
Which perfectly explains why we get stuck. It's one thing to encounter this contact, this friction with reality. But the truly fascinating part is what happens after the contact.
The aftermath is where the real damage is done.
There's this terrifying human tendency to encounter a massive consequence, sometimes an outright collapse of our lives, and yet somehow we emerge on the other side still fundamentally organized by the exact same patterns that caused the trouble in the first place.
It is the ultimate tragedy of human behavior.
It's like enduring the agonizing pain of the fire, but stubbornly refusing to move your hand.
Or perhaps even worse, you pull your hand away, but then you immediately reach right back into the flame the next day.
Right, because you refuse to update your internal map of what fire actually does.
Exactly. We can decode why we do this through a concept called linear reality deduction.
Linear reality deduction. Okay, ground that for me. How does the human mind linearly process reality when reality gives us a harsh answer?
It follows a very predictable linear sequence. Action, then consequence, then defense.
Action, consequence, defense.
Let's break it down. A person acts based on their hypothesis. They meet resisting reality. The consequence arrives, and it is painful, embarrassing, or financially devastating.
The contact moment.
Right. In that exact moment, the dissonance between who they think they are, a smart, capable, good person, and what just happened, a massive failure, is too loud.
It's deafening.
So the ego immediately steps in to manage the dissonance. And here's the rule of linear reality deduction: humans will almost always defend their orientation before they defend the truth.
They defend their orientation, meaning they defend their map of the world, even if that map just drove their car straight off a cliff.
Precisely. Because losing your orientation is utterly terrifying. It induces psychological vertigo.
Because if you admit your map is fundamentally wrong, you don't know which way is up.
You don't know who you can trust or how to survive. So instead of letting the consequence alter the deep design of how we operate, we engage in what we call annotation.
Ah, annotation. Here's where it gets really interesting. This is such a critical distinction in the source material.
It's the core of the problem, really.
The difference between just annotating your life and actually reconstructing it, because we are so good at tricking ourselves into thinking we're changing when we're really just adding little footnotes to the exact same broken blueprint.
Annotation is insidious because it feels like progress. It really does. It is when an old, failing system acquires commentary but remains fundamentally itself.
Give me a personal example of that.
Let's look at a classic dynamic.
Yeah.
Imagine a person has a huge, explosive argument with their spouse. They say terrible things.
Okay.
The next morning, the consequence is clear. The spouse is devastated. The house is silent. The person feels awful, so they apologize. They say, I understand now. I see why you're so upset. I'm really sorry.
I mean, that sounds like growth, right? They acknowledged it. They took ownership.
It sounds like it. But watch what happens. They walk the exact same road the next week. The stress at work builds up. The trigger happens, and they explode again.
Nothing actually shifted.
The underlying behavioral architecture, The inability to regulate stress without lashing out did not change. They just added a verbal footnote of understanding to the same broken system.
They annotated the event.
Yes, they annotated it, but they didn't reconstruct it.
It happens constantly on a macro level, too.
Yeah.
Think about a massive corporation that gets caught in a horrific scandal. Maybe they were dumping toxic waste or exploiting workers.
Oh, corporate annotation is everywhere.
Right. The public outrage is massive. That's the contact. The consequence, what do? They hire a crisis PR firm.
They publish a glowing new corporate values statement about community and integrity.
Exactly. The CEO does an apology tour on all the morning shows.
But look at the architecture. Do the incentive structures for the executives change? Do the profit margins still rely on the exploitation?
Usually no.
If the underlying mechanics remain untouched, the apology tour is just annotation. They annotated their public image, but they left the house exactly as it was.
Or a government. A government agency fails to prevent a tragedy. The public demands answers. So the government commissions an endless, multi-million-dollar, multi-year report.
We see this all the time.
They bring in experts, they write 1,000 pages detailing exactly how everything went wrong.
And then they treat the mere publication of the report as the reform itself.
Yes. The report goes on a shelf, and the agency operates the exact same way.
It is a brilliant, terrifying evasion technique. And to understand why this is so absurd, think about a bathroom scale.
Oh, this is a perfect way to visualize it. I love this analogy in the text.
If you step on your scale every morning and it consistently reads exactly 5 pounds lighter than your actual weight, the machine is broken.
It has a misfit with reality.
Right. How do you fix it?
Yeah.
You wouldn't stand there and praise the scale's emotional sincerity.
You wouldn't say, well, the scale really meant to give me the right weight. Its intentions were pure. It had a rough childhood in the factory.
You would never do that. You know that the physical instrument is out of alignment. To fix it, you have to physically open the machine. You have to recalibrate the springs, adjust the dials, and bring the instrument back into a reliable relation with the physical world.
That is true architectural reconstruction.
Yes. It is mechanical. It is structural. It is not an apology.
But if it's that obvious with a bathroom scale, why is it so agonizingly difficult for us to do it with our own lives? Why do we, as individuals, as corporations, as an entire society, fiercely resist redesigning ourselves?
We resist because of the profound seduction of non-revision.
Seduction of non-revision.
People cling to their old blueprints because old maps, even faulty ones, are incredibly efficient.
Efficient how?
From a neurological standpoint, your brain burns significantly fewer calories running a familiar broken routine than it does forging a brand new neural pathway.
So it's just comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Even if the roof of your house is actively caving in and it's raining on you in your living room, it's your living room. You know exactly where to put the buckets.
Exactly. Building a new house sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. But more than just the comfort of efficiency, recalibration demands loss. And this is the crux of human resistance.
Yes, the loss is what really terrifies us.
When you truly reconstruct, it isn't just the loss of the error itself. It is the loss of the story that made the error feel stable, justified, and safe.
The loss of the story. Can we dig into that? What does it mean to lose the story?
Well, you tell me. How does the text explain it?
Let's take the dynamic between a parent and an adult child. Let's say a parent constantly criticizes their 30-year-old son's career choices.
Okay, a common scenario.
The contact occurs, the son finally sets a boundary and stops visiting.
Mismatched data.
Right. The parent is faced with mismatched data. The hypothesis was, my guidance is helpful, but the reality is my guidance is destroying their relationship.
So why does the parent resist recalibrating their communication style?
Because if they stop criticizing, what are they losing?
They are losing the script that preserves their absolute authority.
Exactly. If they admit their communication is damaging, they have to relinquish the identity of the all-knowing protector.
The redesign threatens their entire self-concept as the unquestioned head of the family. The story they lose is their own supremacy.
So they prefer the pain of estrangement over the pain of losing your identity.
That is tragic.
It is. And you see it in institutions, too. An institution will resist redesigning a flawed policy because admitting the policy was wrong threatens their aura of prestige.
It scales all the way up to nations, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A nation will fiercely, sometimes violently, resist revising its historical narratives.
Because if a country has to look at the mismatched data of its history, the archives, the marginalized voices, the raw facts, and truly recalibrate,
it means it has to grieve its false innocence. It has to look in the mirror and say, We were not the pure, righteous heroes we claim to be.
That loss of narrative innocence is excruciating for a collective ego.
So what do?
They annotate.
Yes, they build a monument. They create a national holiday. But they do not redistribute power, and they do not reconstruct the systems of inequality.
They add commentary, but they categorically refuse reconstruction.
Precisely.
So if apologizing, writing new corporate values, or building monuments is all just annotation, if it's all just putting a Band-Aid over a broken foundation, what does the actual masonry look like?
Now we're getting into the mechanics.
Right. How do we force ourselves to do the hard, unglamorous labor of changing the system? Because recognizing we are stuck in annotation is only half the battle.
We have to move to the operational phase.
Exactly. This brings us to recalibration as praxis.
This is where we move from theory to true mechanics.
Before we get into the steps, let's look at that word praxis. Why use a heavy, academic-sounding word like praxis? Why not just call it growth, or insight, or learning?
Because the word growth has been completely hijacked by the wellness industry.
Oh, that is so true.
Growth, in modern parlance, can be deeply sentimental and entirely passive.
Like reading a quote on Instagram and feeling inspired.
Yes. You can read a profound self-help book, feel a warm, glowing surge of insight, cry a little bit on your couch, and call it growth. You feel different.
But the next day, you behave exactly the same.
Exactly. Nothing material has changed in your architecture.
So growth can be just feeling better about the mistake.
Right. Praxis, on the other hand, is a demanding word. It implies labor. It implies repetition, accountability, and material consequence.
It's active.
Praxis means you are not just acquiring a new emotional state, you are letting the consequence alter the design. You are actively, methodically rebuilding the machinery of your life so it functions differently in reality.
Okay, I love that distinction. Growth is sentiment, praxis is masonry.
That's a great way to put it.
So how do we actually do the masonry? The framework gives us 5 specific disciplines of recalibration. Let's walk through this sequence. Step 1 is event logging.
Step 1 is the foundation of everything, and it requires brutal, uncomfortable honesty. Event logging means asking what happened specifically.
And the challenge here is that you cannot use your self-exonerating story.
Let's do a role play or a scenario.
Sure.
Let's say you're managing a team at work, and a project you're leading completely fails the deadline. The client is furious. How do you usually log that versus how you should log it?
Well, the way I usually log it, the narrative way, sounds like this. I missed the deadline because my team is incompetent, the client kept changing their mind, and I've been incredibly stressed out because I have a cold.
That is a story designed to protect your ego. It is full of caveats and external blame.
Right, it makes me the victim of circumstance.
Event logging strips all of that away. Event logging sounds like this. I agreed to a timeline without consulting the engineering team. When bottlenecks occurred on Tuesday, I did not communicate the delay to the client. The deliverable was not sent on Friday at 5 p.m.
Wow, that is dry.
It is supposed to be dry. You strip away the ego, you strip away the justifications, and you log the clear, undeniable events.
Why does it have to be so sterile?
You have to log the facts to preserve the leverage of the data. If you log a story, you can't fix anything because the story shifts depending on your mood. Facts stay still so you can work on them.
Okay, that makes sense. Step 2 is contrast. This is where we look at intention versus outcome.
Yes, you hold two realities side by side, what was aimed at and what actually occurred.
So in the work example,
You aimed to deliver a stellar project and impress the client. The outcome was a missed deadline and a furious client. Where exactly did the divergence begin?
it forces you to pinpoint the exact moment the train left the tracks. Was it the initial timeline estimation? Was it the lack of communication on Tuesday?
Exactly, and that naturally leads to step 3, which is perhaps the most dangerous and critical step of the entire sequence source location.
Source location. Why is this dangerous?
Because human beings are notoriously terrible at correctly identifying why a system failed. We are incredibly prone to mislocating the source.
Let's expand on this because I think this is where so many people get stuck in therapy or in self-improvement. They are working so hard, but they are fixing the wrong thing.
It happens constantly. We frequently blame ourselves, our character, our willpower, when the system we are operating in is simply badly designed.
Give me an example of that.
Imagine a person who constantly feels overwhelmed and disorganized at work. They say, I'm so lazy, I have terrible time management, I need to wake up at 4 a.m. and hustle harder. They blame their character.
But what if the reality is that their department is understaffed by 3 people, and their manager gives them conflicting priorities every morning.
Exactly. The workflow they were handed is structurally impossible to manage. If they locate the source of the failure as my personal laziness, they will never solve the problem.
They will just burn out trying to outwork a broken system.
Conversely, we often patch a local symptom when the flaw is architectural.
Give me an analogy for that.
Imagine you keep waking up with a terrible headache every morning. You go to the pharmacy, you buy painkillers, and you take them. The headache dulls. You think you solved the problem.
But what's the real problem?
The root cause is a slow carbon monoxide leak in your house.
Oh, man. Treating the symptom is literally going to get you killed in that scenario.
If you mislocate the source of the headache, your recalibration of buying more painkillers just obscures the fatal flaw.
Right.
In our lives, we have to locate exactly where the misfit lives. Is the failure coming from a bad tool? Is it coming from a bad assumption about how other people think? Is it coming from an inherited prejudice you didn't know you had? You have to dig until you find the structural rot.
Because if you mislocate the source, your recalibration is just going to create new, weirder problems.
Okay.
Okay, so we've logged the event, contrasted the intent versus outcome, and we've successfully located the true source. Step 4 is revision selection.
This is the operational phase. What concrete material change follows from this data?
So it can't just be an apology.
It cannot just be, I will try harder next time. Trying harder is an annotation. You must modify a specific parameter. You modify the route, the threshold, the pacing, or the arrangement of your life.
Let's go back to the anger example we used earlier. Say my first reflex, when I get a vague, ambiguous email from a coworker, is to assume they are insulting me, and I fire back an angry reply. I've logged it. I've found the source, my insecurity around ambiguity. What does revision look like?
Revision means changing the mechanics of your response. It might mean mandating a hard, non-negotiable 24-hour pause before responding to any email that makes your heart rate spike.
Oh, that's concrete.
You literally change the pacing of the interaction. You write the draft, you close the laptop, and you walk away. You have changed the physical configuration of the event to alter the future consequence.
And finally, step 5 is retest.
Does the new arrangement produce different contact? If you implement that 24-hour pause, what happens?
Did your relationships at work improve? Did the conflict decrease?
Exactly. Did you catch yourself realizing the email wasn't an insult after all? If a contact hasn't changed, if you are still getting into fights, then the recalibration is unfinished. You have to go back to the drawing board.
This all sounds incredibly logical when we lay it out like this. It's clean, it's methodical.
On paper, yes.
But human beings are deeply messy, emotional creatures. How do we actually do this without just hating ourselves when we fail? Because when I get to step 2, intention versus outcome, and I see how badly I missed the mark or how much pain I caused, my instinct isn't to dispassionately analyze the data.
Of course not.
My instinct is to collapse into a puddle of shame.
The framework anticipates this entirely. Recalibration requires a very specific emotional posture. You must admit the misfit without surrendering to shame. This is the ultimate tightrope walk of praxis.
How do you separate the two? If I messed up, shouldn't I feel bad?
Feeling regret for an outcome is different from feeling shame for your existence.
Oh, that's a good distinction.
If every single contradiction you face, every time reality tells you your map is wrong, is experienced as a total annihilation of your self-worth, you will never learn.
You just shut down.
Your nervous system will simply go into fight or flight mode. Your amygdala takes over, and instead of processing data, you will build a fortress to defend yourself against reality.
You'll start blaming other people just to survive the psychological pain.
Precisely. You have to learn how to become revisable without becoming formless. Praxis is what protects revision from dissolving into chaos and self-loathing.
Because it gives you a structure.
When you feel that wave of shame coming, the structured steps log, contrast, locate, revise, retest, they give your mind a lifeline. They give your panicked brain something constructive, something mechanical to do with the pain of the mistake, rather than just drowning in it.
So the structure itself is the antidote to the shame.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we understand the mindset. We understand the 5 steps of praxis. But to successfully perform this architectural reconstruction, to really rebuild the way we operate, we need an overarching blueprint. You can't just start knocking down walls.
Right. You can't just knock down walls in your house because you found a leak. You need to know what is holding the roof up.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings us to the core architecture mapping. Mapping the text to the 40P.
The 40P is the compass for this entire process. 4 pillars: target, truth, totally, and title.
How do we actually rebuild the house using this framework? Let's start with the first pillar, target.
Target is about your aim and direction. In the recalibration sequence we just discussed, this maps directly to the contrast phase.
What were we actually aiming at before reality hit us?
Now, the crucial distinction here is that most people confuse having a target with having a rigid plan.
What's the difference? Don't you need a plan to hit a target?
You need tactics, but a rigid plan is brittle. A rigid plan assumes you can control all the variables. It says, I will get promoted by next June by doing exactly X, Y, and Z.
And then reality happens.
The moment that plan meets resisting reality, say, your company freezes hiring or a global pandemic hits, the plan shatters. And if your entire identity was tied to the plan, you shatter with it.
So what's the alternative?
A flexible target allows you to drastically adjust the route while keeping the destination completely in focus.
Let's use the archery analogy from the sources because it perfectly illustrates this. Think about an archer drawing a bow. The target is clear. Is the bullseye on a hay bale 100 yards away?
Yeah.
Does not move.
Right.
But the path the arrow actually takes, that is highly dependent on a million shifting, uncontrollable variables.
The wind speed, the humidity, the tension of the string, the fatigue in the archer's arm.
Exactly. A rigid plan says the arrow must travel exactly 47 degrees northeast at exactly 120 feet per second.
And if a sudden massive gust of wind comes from the west?
The arrow misses by 10 feet. The rigid plan fails, and the rigid archer gives up, claiming the wind is unfair.
They blame the wind?
They do. But a flexible target says, hit the bullseye. It dictates that you must adjust your aim, adjust your pull, aim slightly to the left to account for the wind, but you never take your eye off the center.
Your target must be absolutely clear, but your tactics, your daily route, must remain fluid.
Which naturally requires the second pillar, truth. And here, we are defining truth as radical self-honesty, or what the text calls epistemological integrity.
Epistemological integrity.
Wait, let's ground that for a second. That sounds like a philosophy PhD term. You just mean not lying to yourself about what you actually believe and where you actually are, right?
That is exactly what it means. When reality provides mismatched data, when you make that mistake, truth demands that we look at the raw data entirely stripped of the ego's defense mechanisms.
Oh, rationalization.
No projecting the blame onto your coworkers, no denial of the facts.
So how does that actually play out when we are trying to recalibrate?
It means you cannot possibly recalibrate if you are lying about your starting location.
It's exactly like a GPS.
Yes, perfect analogy.
You can have a crystal clear target. Say you want to drive to a new city. You type the destination into the machine. But the GPS cannot route you if it doesn't know where you currently are.
It needs coordinates.
If you are sitting in a parking lot in Chicago, but you are too embarrassed to admit you took a wrong turn hours ago, so you tell the GPS, oh, I'm already in New York, the directions it gives you will be utterly, comically useless.
That is the perfect way to understand it. Truth is the bedrock coordinate. If you obscure your starting point because facing it is too painful, every subsequent step of recalibration will be built on a falsehood.
You have to look at the wreckage of your mistake.
You do. You have to look at it and say, I am here. It is incredibly messy. I made a huge error. My map was entirely wrong and I caused harm, but this is exactly where I am.
Until you input the true starting coordinate, you cannot generate a route to the target.
Which brings us to the third pillar, totally. Target, truth, totally. This one is about commitment.
And it connects directly to the physical act of architectural reconstruction we talked about in Praxis. It asks the question, are you all in or are you hedging your bets?
We constantly hedge our bets. The human brain is designed to seek safety, so it contains a stern warning system against total commitment.
When people attempt to redesign their lives, let's say they want to leave a secure but soul-crushing career to start their own business, or they want to fundamentally change a toxic dynamic in their marriage, they almost always keep one foot out the door.
They build what we call escape routes.
Because committing fully is terrifying. What if the redesign fails? You need a backup plan, right?
That is the conventional wisdom, but architecturally it's disastrous. A person says, I'm going to set a strict boundary with my toxic family members, but then internally they add the escape route. But if they get really, really mad and threaten to cut me off, I'll just apologize and go back to normal.
Why does having that mental escape route doom the redesign?
Because If you are only half in on your new architecture, you are not actually becoming anything new. You are just practicing.
You're role-playing.
Yes, you are role-playing the redesign. When you have an escape route, you send mixed, muddy signals to reality, and reality will respond with mixed, muddy consequences.
Totally means finding the courage to burn the ships.
It means closing the escape routes so that the new architecture is forced to bear your actual weight.
It's the difference between doing a fire drill and actually being in a fire. If you know it's a drill, you don't act with the same necessity. Being totally in is terrifying, but it's the only way the blueprint actually becomes a real building that can shelter you.
It is the only way.
And that brings us to the final pillar, the fourth T, which I honestly think is the masterstroke of this entire framework title.
Title is perhaps the most profound of the four because it deals directly with our identity. It revolves around the concept of nounships and learning to hold our sense of self very lightly.
Let's really unpack nounships because it's a unique term, and I think it speaks to a massive problem in our modern culture. We literally have social media bios where we are encouraged to list our permanent nouns.
Exactly. A nounship is the recognition that the labels we use for ourselves and the labels we apply to others are temporary, fluid states of being, not fixed, eternal identities.
Okay, so how does this apply to mistakes?
When you encounter massive mismatch data, when you fail spectacularly, your reaction depends entirely on how rigid your title is. If your title is rigid, you look at the failure and you say, I am a failure.
You fuse your entire essence with the localized event.
You do. And the moment you do that, recalibration stops dead in its tracks. You cannot fix a machine if you believe the machine is fundamentally, inherently cursed or evil.
If the machine is just bad, you throw it away.
Right. Think about how we use therapy speak today. If my rigid title is, I am an anxious person, then every single time my heart races or I get nervous before a presentation, I don't see it as a temporary state to manage.
I see it as confirmation of my permanent identity.
I am just fulfilling my destiny as an anxious noun.
But if I hold titles flexibly, if I use non-chips, how does that change the language?
It changes completely. Instead of, I am an anxious person, you say, I am currently experiencing an anxious state. Instead of, I am a failure, you say, I am occupying a space of failure right now regarding this specific project.
It creates distance.
It creates vital, life-saving distance. When you separate the immutable essence of who you are from the transient, shifting conditions you are experiencing, you survive the mistake.
You can let the old, faulty map die without feeling like you have to die with it.
Your core identity isn't tied to the error, so you are free to examine the error.
The framework talks about this in terms of variables. It says we need to shift from being a responsive one variable to an autonomous variable one. Can you break down the math of that metaphor? How does that tie into title and identity?
In any dynamic system or equation, the one is the center of gravity. It is the anchor point. It's the thing that everything else orbits around or the thing that dictates the terms.
Yeah.
If you operate as a responsive one variable, your identity is entirely dictated by the room you walk into. You are hypervigilant, constantly bending and shape-shifting to maintain approval.
Your title changes based on what the loudest voice in the room demands of you.
Exactly. You are the dependable, quiet one with your demanding boss. You are the wild party friend with your college buddies. You are the peacekeeper in your dysfunctional family.
Your entire architecture is reactive. You have no core, you only have reflexes.
You're just a chameleon, constantly annotating yourself to survive the contact with different environments.
Precisely. You never reconstruct, you just change colors.
But an autonomous variable 1 generates behavior from an internal architecture. Your target and your truth are anchored deep inside you.
You still meet the world as a variable, meaning you're flexible, you can adapt to the wind like the archer, you can be polite in a meeting and relaxed in a dinner, but you do not overwrite your core identity to do so.
Your title is chosen, not inherited from the room.
Yes, you can say, I am the one who shows up authentically, even in rooms that expect me to shrink.
Holding your title lightly, knowing that you are not your mistakes, and you are not the labels people put on you, means you don't have to spend your energy defending a fragile ego.
When the fire burns you, you don't have to defend the hand. You just process the data, pull the hand back, and recalibrate.
This is, well, it's a massive paradigm shift.
It takes the existential sting out of living, in a way. It lowers the stakes of daily life from survival of my ego to gathering data to navigate better.
It's incredibly freeing.
If we bring all of this together, look at the journey we've just taken. We started with that overwhelming dread, that sinking feeling in your stomach when you make a mistake. But through this deep dive, you, the listener, you are no longer someone who views mistakes as shameful permanent stains on your character.
You now see them as vital contact data. They are simply the necessary, inevitable friction of reality answering your hypothesis.
You now possess the framework to refuse the profound seduction of simply annotating your life. You know that apologies, new PR statements, and tears on a therapist's couch are meaningless without structural architectural change.
You are fully equipped to engage in recalibration as praxis. You know how to strip the ego away and log the event.
You can contrast your intention with the outcome, locate the true structural source of the failure, and actively revise the architecture of your response.
And you have the 40P blueprint to guide that entire construction project. You maintain a flexible target. You practice radical truth about your starting coordinates.
You are totally committed to closing the escape routes. And you hold your title, your identity, fluidly enough to survive the necessary death of your old, broken maps.
If we connect all of this back to the bigger picture, it leaves us with a profound realization about the nature of our existence. We are not victims being battered by a random universe. We are architects engaged in a constant dynamic dialogue with reality.
It's a beautiful way to look at it.
And so I want to leave you with a final lingering idea to mull over as you go about your day. If the universe only ever speaks to us through the friction of contact, what is the current recurring mistake in your life urgently trying to redesign about you?
What is the fire trying to teach your hand?
And more importantly, are you going to keep just adding footnotes and apologies to the old, collapsing blueprint? Or are you finally ready to tear down the walls and build something that lasts?
What an incredible question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Step out into the world today. Don't be afraid to touch the fire, gather the data, and become the architect of your own meaning. We'll catch you next time.